World of Tanks graphics settings. These are the graphics settings for World of Tanks. Basically, what you do is you go over here to the upper left and you click on settings. And then you go to the second tab, which is graphics, and you see this screen right here. Some graphic settings have to be done when you download the game. That is for the standard definition mode and the high definition mode. And the reason why is because when you do the high definition mode, it will download images that have higher quality and requires more disk space than the standard definition. So you have some presets over here, ultra, maximum, minimum, etc. When you use the ultra, you need a higher performance graphics card, and it will cause your computer to get hotter, the GPU. I can run on the Ultra SD. You'll also get a lower frame rate. I can run it on my laptop, which is now 5 years old, and it's actually a fast laptop. The pass mark is like 8,000, which is really good. However, it starts to overheat. The game will crash if I run with the Ultra SD. Maybe not so much with the SPG. I play with the minimum, but the minimum really doesn't set the minimum, so I do custom. I start with the minimum and then I go through the settings and reduce them a little bit further, and it becomes custom. You can use recommended, and the recommended will guess what quality to use. So now over here you have something called dynamic adjustment. What this does is it will change the graphics quality while you're playing the game. So if nothing's happening, you'll have higher graphics quality. But if the GPU starts to do a lot of rendering, it will reduce the quality in order to get the job done. For example, I like to stream videos while playing. Sometimes it causes my computer to overheat. Sometimes it interferes with the recording software. There's a lot of issues going on. So you can use dynamic adjustment to get better performance when the GPU is a little bit busy. So now you see you've got screen and you have details. There's another option up here. It says 3D render resolution, but I couldn't get it to work. It says to use Shift minus and Shift plus, but it makes no change. Mine always says 100%. So you've got screen and details. We're going to start with screen. You've got the window, full screen, and borderless. I like to use full screen. Sometimes I've used windowed before, but in general I like to use full screen. Sometimes it does lock the game, and when the game crashes, sometimes it resets it to windowed. Screen resolution. 16 to 9 is obviously the ratio, which would be 16 horizontal versus 9 vertical. I play with 1920 by 1080. You can try some of the smaller graphical resolutions if you have a slow computer, or depending on your monitor, you might have to use a lower resolution if you have an older monitor. I play with the highest unless I have some sort of an issue with performance. So over here we have something called vertical synchronization. So you're probably aware that the video display has a frame rate. You've probably heard 30 frames per second for video, and 60 frames per second is a new standard. What this does is it reduces or it caps your frame rate for the game, because the game frame rate is different than the video card frame rate, and it's different than the monitor frame rate. The game tries to put out a certain number of frames. The card might have a limitation and the monitor might have a limitation. So what I would do, set it to 60 if you think your frame rate might be a little bit jittery. If you don't think you have any problems, don't worry about it. Chances are your monitor probably is new enough that this feature doesn't matter so much anymore. Triple buffering. When you pan very quickly, the screen stretches. The top of the video passes across faster than the bottom because it's drawing from top to bottom. It takes a second. Okay, it doesn't take a second. It takes a split second. But when you pan across, you might have moved so far that it hasn't finished drawing the frame yet. So the top is where you're going to, and the bottom, it'll draw where you came from. So it'll show like a little diagonal to the screen. And triple buffering can reduce that. However, I want to use minimum usage of the GPU, so I disable it. Hardware acceleration. This is used for the browser, which is basically your garage. Turn it on, and if it works, you're fine, and if it doesn't work, turn it off. I have 2 GPUs on my laptop. It's possible that this could use 2 different GPUs. The field of view is what you see on the screen. So when you zoom in, you see a circular reticle when you're sniping, and you see a vehicle. When you zoom all the way in, you can make it so that it looks like you zoom in further, or you have a wider view, because sometimes you zoom in too far and you can't really see, so you got to zoom out a little bit. So you adjust this to change the field of view, how much you see when you zoom in. This is, as you can see, it lets you set a minimum and a maximum. Display refresh rate. Mine was at 40. However, I'm sure my display supports 60, so I just updated it to 60. Interface scaling. Says auto in one time. If you have a large display, I had a 60-inch television, I put the game on, you couldn't read the text because the text was all up in the upper corner, very tiny, while on my laptop it takes up almost half of the upper left. So I couldn't read any of the text anywhere in the game. So I couldn't play on the large screen television. That was 10 years ago. Technology may have changed, but this allows you to change the interface. For example, if you change the screen resolution to something like that, the letters are going to be on the screen are going to become very big, and then you have less gameplay area. Select the primary display if you have 2 monitors. I only have 1. Colorblind mode, instead of green and red, it chooses, maybe it's red and purple. I don't want to use purple. I'm so used to playing with green as the allies that I just do green and red. The color adjustment. If you want to increase contrast, brightness, saturation. Brightness makes it brighter. You can also make it darker. Contrast is going to make the shadows like around the trees a lot darker. And saturation boosts the color. It enhances the color so it might look a little cartoonish. If you think that the graphics look a little bland, the color looks bland, you could do a color adjustment. Mine doesn't have the option. This, I don't know what this option is, ghosted. I can't use it. What gamma does is how it overall enhances, brightens up the image quality. This is, for example, the recommended setting would be right here where you can't see the logo. This would be too far to the left. This would be too far to the right. But you see what happens when I increase the gamma? All this round over here gets boosted. So I could go to the default. I don't want, and you see now there's a little effect. There's a brightness effect, so you can see the slider, but when you kick it up, it looks really bad, and when you put it down, the brightness effects goes away. So I don't like it when the gamma is equal. I like it on the default setting. We're going to go to details. You've got standard and improved. I use standard. If you have a good graphics card, you might want to use improved. Anti-aliasing. If you have a diagonal line, it fills in the diagonal so it doesn't look like a staircase. It fills in the colors along the diagonals so that it looks more smooth. Texture quality means that it spends more time rendering a texture. I'm going to assume that when they render a texture, it does 1 pass, 2 pass, 3 pass, 4 pass. For example, you skip every other pixel, skip every 3 pixels, skip every 4 pixels. This would allow you to grab more pixels from the texture when mapping it onto the vehicle. Object LOD. The objects in the distance. Do you want to see objects when they're far away? Do you want to see higher quality when they're far away? If you adjust this, you're going to see higher quality and more objects far away. If you bring it down, you're going to see fewer objects in your game, in your view area, the draw area. The draw distance is the distance that you see, so anything that's beyond the draw distance will not be drawn. Water quality, I keep mine on low. Terrain quality, I believe it's for polygons. So I'm going to guess that with the terrain quality, when you look at the map is actually low quality. But they use computer interpolation to improve the quality, like the anti-aliasing. So if you've got two triangles that come together and it makes a sharp joint, they can smooth it, they can make it look round, even though the original is sharp. So for example, if you have a cube with sharp edges, they can turn it more sphere-like using computer graphics, adding shadows and shade, rounding off the edges. That's what it does. Extra effects quality. Sparks, ricochets, explosions, smoke. Sniper mode effects, including ricochets, explosions, and smoke. Track physics, which is going to be when I see tracks far away, they don't move. And you don't see the wheels, or the wheels look really big until you get closer. Enable track and wheel effects would be the trail in the snow, water splashes, etc. This obviously is not available on my game, or is this, and I don't use them, but you'll see them in other players' games. The lighting quality, when you have something called a light source, and in ray tracing, you have a light source and it fires a ray at an object. 1 pixel it hits. And it guesses the color, it draws shadows, does reflections, all of that. And it has to do that, 1,000,000 times per frame. to draw a picture. So this is the quality. Maybe it will add more reflections, or it's reflections, shadows, etc. So you got the shadow, you got the shade. To use an example, they do the shade improperly on winter maps. Anyone who lives in the north in the snow, you know that the sun lights all sides of an object equally because of the way it bounces off the snow. In the video game, they do it improperly. They only show one side facing the sun lit, and the back side they put in the shade. That's not the way reality is in the real snow. Post processing is going to be the vignette. I get vignette in my game when I take screenshots. Film grain, heat shimmer. I didn't know that was an effect in the game. Shockwave. That might be when you fire the gun. Motion blur. When a vehicle moves, if you have motion blur, most video and graphics, you want the motion blur, because if you don't do it, it'll go by so fast, it'll look like it's disappearing. You'll see let's say I'm doing the cursor, you'll see it here, and then you'll see it jump to the middle, and then you see it jump to the other side. If you have the motion blur, it fills in as it's moving along. Vegetation quality is obviously the bushes and the grass density. I don't play with any grass. The foliage transparency. This used to be a forbidden mod where there was a feature where you could get rid of all the bushes. It was forbidden in North America, but maybe it was allowed on other servers. It looks like now it's a feature in the game. Then you got grass in the sniper mode. So these are the graphics settings. The other place you find the graphics settings is you go to the console that allows you to install and launch the game, and you check the option to turn it into HD mode. I'm going to check right now. Tell you exactly where it is. I'm loading up the console called Game Center. And I believe that there might be an option when you hit the play button to launch a different graphics mode. I'm looking in the settings. Advanced settings. I don't see it under there. Don't see it under auto updates. Don't see it under updates. Don't see it under general. But somewhere there in the console, there is an option to do the HD client. Okay, so those are the game settings. And if you have to hit apply, which means you can still continue to change settings, or you hit OK to go back towards the garage. When you change the screen resolution, your screen's going to blank. It'll take a few seconds to adjust. Then it's going to ask you if you want to save, and then it does a countdown, and the reason why is because if you don't do anything, it will revert back to the original setting, or you can hit cancel. Okay, that is the graphic settings for World of Tanks. If you have any questions or comments, please post below.